All right, so I do have slides only because I gave this talk at another meetup at one point. It took like an hour or something. So now it's going to be a challenge to do it in 5 minutes, 26 slides, I think. So top lessons I learned from my developers. Not this one. The first lesson, never mind. We'll just go over this. All right. So communication. We work as a team. We need to communicate with each other. We can't just work in isolation because we need to share ideas and we need to be, together when we're building something. So communication. Next one, cross-learning. We learn from developers. Developers definitely learn from us. They don't know everything about all the environment that the product that they're working on lives in. So we have that information because we test everything. We don't just test in isolation. We don't just test a small chunk of code. We know everything. So it's very good for them to know about this whole setup so that they can, write better code and they can think about certain aspects. All right, clean code. When we write automation code, we need to be tidy. We need to know where we've put stuff. We need to know what we've named stuff so that we can find it later. And don't put everything into one class if you're using classes. Don't put everything into one file. Have dedicated classes and files for dedicated stuff so that you don't have something like this where it's going to be really difficult to find the information. Don't reinvent the wheel. Try to use existing code for some of the tasks that you're using. Somebody has probably already created a library or some helper code somewhere that can help you with what you need to do. So you don't need to, create a new method where you're trying to, figure out what the first day or the last day of the month is, or something like that, or whether it's an odd year or something like that. Somebody already wrote the code, just use it. Do code reviews and participate. So have code reviews for your own code, but also participate in code reviews, even for developers. Also allow developers to do code review for your own code. The only thing that can happen here is that you can learn more. So nothing bad can happen from this. You might have some discussions with developers. They might be sometimes not very polite, but it's not your code. You don't need to take it personally. It's just code. And for you, it's a learning process. So it's all good for everyone. Debugging. You can do debugging. So whenever a test fails, you can, try to figure out what is happening in your test. You can find out, the data that is being passed through all kinds of systems, and it's very easy for you to figure out what is happening once you've set your IDE to debug and just go step by step and figure everything out. Logs. I've said this before in a talk today. Reading logs is very important and very useful because you can get an idea about what your application is doing, and it's easier for you to figure out when a particular error occurs. And it's also very useful for you to understand better the system that you're testing. You can actually see what's happening behind the scenes. Branching. If you're working on code, if you're writing test automation, sometimes you just need to create a separate branch for what you're doing because you might need to change the version of a dependency. Let's say you're switching from Selenium 2 to Selenium 4. That's going to be a mess. So you need to have a separate branch where you're going to fix all the tests just so you make sure that your pipelines are still running and they're not blocked for weeks until you actually manage to fix your failing tests. Branches are good. I don't like them particularly, but in some situations, they're very, very useful. Things are rarely random, so if you find some bugs in your system, try to make sure you reproduce them several times because when you find a bug, chances are, what happened right now is going to happen again, given that the circumstances that happened when you reproduce the bug will happen again. So just try to make sure you understand why a certain bug occurred. Use your IDE properly, like make the most out of your IDE. For example, I'm an IntelliJ fan, you might have noticed on my laptop, simply because IntelliJ has so many useful shortcuts for me to use. It has all kinds of auto-completion, auto-generation of all kinds of things. So make sure when you're using your IDE, you use it to its full potential and you understand, what are all the features that it has and how it can help you. If something doesn't work, you've tried something, it didn't work out, no problem. You can just move on. It was a learning experience for you, no harm done there. you gathered more information, and the next time when you are going to try something, you're not going to try the same thing because it failed. So now you know, next time you will try something totally different. Developers can build things, but also you can build things. So don't just think you're a QA who cannot build anything. If developers can, you can do it too. You have knowledge. If you don't, you can learn it. So just don't sit back just because you're not a developer. Try to, set goals and, work on reaching them and building them. I need like 30 seconds more. Don't fall for the hype. There are many tools coming out like every week, every day. Whenever you're trying to use a new tool, make sure you have all the relevant information regarding that tool to make sure that like 3 months from now, 6 months from now, either the tool doesn't exist anymore or somebody doesn't support the tool anymore and you're left with some tests that you wrote for 6 months that you have to like spend more months to migrate to something else. So make sure you have like all the information before using a certain tool or a certain process. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate code if you don't need to. Less code is better. Keep yourself informed. Read release notes from all your tools and libraries that you're using. Read blogs, read books, come to conferences, talk to people, all that. Get help from developers when they can help you. If they can't help you, don't worry. There are other resources you can look for when they don't have the time for you. Build things. Nothing is impossible to build. It just might be very, very hard. Keep working on something. If you have a goal, just go for it, learn, and you will get there. And thank you. Questions?
In our team, we have 3 people as QA, automation engineers, and we use different IDEs. All of us use different IDEs. And sometimes when we merge our code,
it's a disaster.
Some problems. Have you met this kind of issues, and what's your advice?
Yeah.
I would prefer to use all together the same thing, like Ruby Mine.
Yeah, so I know this issue. It happens to me currently because like everyone in our team, like currently I'm the only QA, but we will have a new colleague joining soon. But like every developer is using a different IDE, so that's a mess. So for me, because I'm the QA lead, I will set, let's say, the goal for the team. So I will have everyone use the same tools, if were possible, and it would be the same like with the development team. Ideally, they should use the same tool. There's no real way where you can enforce this. Like you can't just say use this, but maybe just kind of try to analyze the benefits of each tool. Maybe you can find out what is the best one, and then have everyone migrate to that one, because like each of them have certain benefits over the other one. So just discuss this with the team and try to convince them to just have one, because of the issues that you're encountering. You're spending too much time fixing something that you really shouldn't. Yeah. Thank you.